Hello. If you have met me the last 10 years of my life, almost, you have probably thought of me as the Dungeons and Dragons guy. But if you knew me for the 10 years prior to that, you've probably heard of me as the Magic the Gathering guy.
Wait, Dritz is in this set?
Now Dungeons and Dragons is entering Magic the Gathering. They are the two biggest franchises to come out of Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, they're both owned by the same company. It seems like a no-brainer for them to come together. If you don't know what those two things are, I'm here to explain that to you. Magic the Gathering is a trading card game where you and a friend, maybe, grab a deck and versus each other.
Nice, I'm gonna counter it.
Decks may be constructed out of a specific color, a certain tribe, based on a combo, or maybe based on a meta game, the flavor of the week, month, season, whatchamacallit. Players may be called spell slingers or planeswalkers if you're old like me. I have no idea why they changed the terminology. Every player falls into certain stereotypes. You may be a Timmy who just wants to cast big splashy spells. You might just, like to build combos like a Johnny, or you're just building decks because of the flavor, the new block of the year. You're a Vorthos, sort of like me, I suppose. I'm a Magic the Gathering player from, say, the 90s, early 2000s. I think my first pack was probably Classic 6th edition. I remember getting those tournament packs. They don't make those anymore. And nowadays, you have to buy the booster boxes like these with a whole bunch of boosters inside, as individual boosters like this. Back then, they used to release novels that tied into the card sets. So there's lore that goes hand in hand with the card art, the flavor, the name. You'll have these characters, the lore, the flavor, the card art that sort of ties together to give the world its own sort of vibe. And only recently, novels came back with some comic books as well. So we're starting to see Magic the Gathering grow back into its sort of lore-centric space. I used to play in the T2, Type 2 tournament back in the early 2000s, but since then we sort of drifted in Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, I lied. I was tricked into joining Dungeons and Dragons when I was in university. Basically, I joined a board games club. They said there was a free spot. I sat down and peer pressure. I played Dungeons and Dragons since then, and hey, I'm a dungeon master about 10 years on.
If you could just explain the dungeon part to me.
I have a quick idea.
Dungeons and Dragons is a game where you and a bunch of friends get together with Dungeon Master, probably also one of your mates, to sort of go through an adventure together. Unlike Magic the Gathering, there is no winning like in most competitive games. In this case, Dungeons and Dragons is more of a cooperative game where you're trying to experience an adventure, defeat the big baddie, discover the twist. It's all about, the journey along the way. But okay, it's just an excuse for people to hang out, right?
We have to play this immediately. Come on, let's go.
To play Dungeons and Dragons, it is highly recommended you get a player's handbook, otherwise known as a PHB. And or if you're a Dungeon Master, you probably want to get the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master's Guide. But for absolute beginners, I would recommend the starts. And seeing these two franchises come together has been interesting, to say the least. So what's so cool about this is that a couple of years ago, two planes from Magic the Gathering were turned into Dungeons & Dragons sourcebooks. There's Ravnica, and then there's Theros. Aberon, Ravenloft, Greyhawk, Dragonlance, and so on and so forth. Not to mention all the homebrew worlds that Dungeon Masters themselves have created for their own campaign. And because we live in a digital age, it's really cool that we're starting to see campaigns that started as podcasts and YouTube series being turned into hard copy sourcebooks. And now that the whole multiverse of Wizards of the Coast is finally converging / opening up, all this talk of multiple planes from Wizards of the Coast converging across both franchises, it fits in nicely with starter sets like Rick and Morty box. But in Magic the Gathering, the first time we encountered Ravnica was all the way back in 2005, and Theros in 2013. The Vorthos in me is probably thinking Wizards of the Coast is going about this backwards because the two famous planes are being turned to source books in Dungeons & Dragons before we get a source book on Dominaria. But I digress. This is really cool. We're finally getting a Dungeons & Dragons set in Magic the Gathering, and it is no less from the Forgotten Realms. So if you have checked out the spoiler list for all the cards in AFR, you're going to see so many iconic Dungeons & Dragons things, objects, characters, places, situations, turn up as Magic the Gathering cards, and that's really, really cool. You have fantastic artifacts like the Book of Vile Darkness, you have the Vorpal Sword, you have a portable hole, and it's got my favorite monster, the Gelatinous Cube. Now, if you're a Magic the Gathering player like me and a Dungeon Master, this is going to be a huge deal because it opens a huge area of options for both players of Magic the Gathering in terms of where the storyline could take us, the kinds of card sets. It especially excites me because I'm more of a Vorthos player, and as a Dungeon Master, there's a whole lot more worlds for your multiversal campaigns to visit. You know, as a bit of a comic book nerd, it's going to be really cool when we start to do power scaling across Magic the Gathering. Like, you know, how does Tiamat stack up against Nicol Bolas? Because when you know things like that, we can have Nicol Bolas, I mean, bit of a spoiler, he's already defeated in the Magic the Gathering story, but we could still have him turn up in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. So here's hoping that we see more cards based on characters, places, things, situations coming from the planes that were primarily from Dungeons & Dragons appear in Magic the Gathering, and vice versa. I mean, I'm still waiting for that new Phyrexia sourcebook. And this is probably going to be the card set to bring me back to FNM. I mean, I've not played Magic for the last few years. I think I'm going to build a deck. Now is a really good time, Dungeoneers, to reach out across the aisle, talk to your Magic Gathering friends, how do you play Magic Gathering, and vice versa for you spell slingers or planeswalkers, if you roll like me, to reach across the aisle and find out for your Dungeoneers how to roll for initiative. Hey, so if you're in, from, or around Malaysia, you probably want to join D&D MY and MTG MY. Can't wait to see you there. Let's roll for initiative and sling some spells, yeah?
My turn has ended.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching. That was literally the first video we uploaded as Kaki Tabletop. Let us know in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to see from us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our official Kaki Tabletop social media channels.